I'm usually down around 8.
I can go to bed sooner, but I push it off some.
Yeah, when I was younger and was raising babies, I was up super late. Like it was really common to never sleep at all. But these days I go to sleep very deliberately. I've been up since 2:30 right now. Hi everybody. So I'm not sure if I would stop sharing the screen or you would stop sharing the screen.
I think if you needed to flip over, you could probably stop sharing and she might be able to take over whenever needed.
View options.
You need me to stop?
Well, why don't you just put speakers on the screen for a little bit here. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
I hope everybody's had a wonderful day. What have you done today, Tasha?
Worked. Spent the day at the hospital, normal, seeing patients and just getting stuff done, taking care of.
And it's pretty, how crazy is it at the hospital these days?
It's manageable right now.
Is it?
Thankfully we've got, we've had good guidance and leadership through all of the decision making, and so everybody's just knows what to do and just following along, doing
so
the
there's
thing.
A good plan in place for
Yep.
for the procedures or whatever. What are the cases like in your area?
So in Volusia County, we do have cases that have it's not a high volume of cases. I didn't look at the numbers today, but fortunately, it seems like those that are the most, there's a very small number of those that are in most critical need, needing to be hospitalized. So that's good. That means that
exactly.
symptoms are being managed and people are following.
Great.
Protocol and
what
stuff.
A crazy time. What a crazy time. Has your church been able to gather back yet?
No, we've still been doing live streaming, even last night we had a live streaming prayer meeting, and
nice.
trying to stay connected in that way. We are
awesome.
seeing lots of good things, people still being baptized and people still, hearts being changed. So, even in the times when you feel like things are most disconnected, there's still a way to connect.
Exactly.
Exactly.
We had our first gathering inside since all of this started, but we did it by RSVPing. So our building seats 700 and we only allowed 150 in. So they all had to be separated by 6 feet in all directions. So that's a lot of room, a lot of
maneuvering.
Yes. But it was great. And so we'll have our first midweek service based on tickets and so forth. So anyway, everything's unique and different right now. And everybody is, of course, making a lot of jokes about, flattening the curve of their belly because of all the quarantine eating and so forth. So we're gonna talk about food, of course, because that's what we like to do. And you and I have discussed before about how I naturally did not like natural foods. I liked mac and cheese. And I didn't even like real mac and cheese. I did not like it when I got a hold of somebody's homemade scratch mac and cheese. If it wasn't Kraft orange coloring, I did not want it at all. So let's talk about what are some things that, like, why do some people, I see some when I see a child eat salad, it blows my mind because I did not want the texture of crunch in my mouth.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. Why
Yeah.
is it that different people have these inclinations?
Yeah, it's so interesting. And I feel like it has a lot to do, it can have a lot to do with our DNA makeup. It also has a lot to do with the cultural settings that we're in, the foods that are familiar, how it's presented to a child the first time. If mom is feeding baby, some green peas, and the whole time she's going, the baby's not likely going to like that food.
That's a great example.
Yeah.
That's exactly how I fed my children.
So, the whole thought and concept of how do we build good habits from the beginning, it really, a lot of it lays on the mama's shoulders in terms of presentation and excitement around trying new things. And, I think it's funny that God gave us such very astute taste mechanisms in our mouth. I mean, it's like, we have this instinct to survive. So we know that we have to put something in our mouth. Babies from a very early age know that something is supposed to go in that mouth.
Yes.
And they're naturally drawn to the mama as that source.
Yes.
And they initially love that sweet flavor, and mother's milk is normally really fatty, so it makes them feel full and happy. And we call it milk drunk when they're so happy and they're full. But all of that has to do with this whole personal instinct that we have to try to survive.
I want to interject that for any young moms that are listening, I was so thankful for the advice I got from my doctor when I had my babies. He said, I was like by the book, what to expect when you're expecting. And then I got what to expect your first year. And I mean, I was wanting that book to be exact. And Morgan was early on everything. Morgan was full-fledged walking by the time she was 9 months old. She was full-fledged talking by the time she was a year old. I mean, sentences, everything Morgan did was early. And so my doctor said, when she starts wanting your food, that's when you can give it to her. She will tell you when she wants it. And sure enough, she did. Her first foods were much better than mine. Her first foods were broccoli and everything the veggies I was eating. And I did the old fashioned thing where I chewed it myself and gave it to her.
Well,
we don't want to hear that during quarantine right now, but that's what my grandma did. And I just wanted to do like that old fashioned thing. So that's what I did.
And truthfully, modeling is the best thing that we can do for our kids anyway. So, I think that it is best when they begin to eat what we are already eating. Otherwise, we grow up with this mindset with the children that there's kids foods and adult foods, and how do they figure out when the transition is?
Me.
Yeah. And so it's harder. And in that point, then those taste perceptions and those taste preferences are really already built in with the children, because they've gotten used to what is like the kids' snacky foods and all of those type of things, less of the grown-up food, that they should at some point transition to.
So tell me, I remember in school, and we actually have a slide with various different taste types, and it shows kind of where the tongue is attracted, has certain tastes. And I remember reading about this in school. Let's talk about this. Like, how real is this?
Yeah.
How is it developed? All of that.
Yeah, so there are essentially 5 different taste profiles. Hannah, are you able to put that slide up? Those 5 different taste profiles are sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and umami. So we know pretty much right off what the sweet flavor is. And if you look at the region of the tongue, that's typically right there at the tip of the tongue where you're tasting that. Sour might be more in the sides of your tongue. You know, you have that pucker kind of a response with the sour flavor. Salty is right around the rim, the edge of the tongue. Bitter might be further in the back of the tongue. And umami is a funky word that is fairly new in some areas, but that's kind of like that earthy kind of a deep flavor. Cooked tomatoes have that. Mushrooms have that. If you want to think of something like vegetable broth, things like Parmesan cheese, those type of flavors, it sort of gives that depth of flavor. So there are a few DNA markers that actually identify how you might interpret some of these flavors. There's two main ones, is the cilantro taster and the bitter tasters. And so have you ever heard of anybody say that cilantro tastes like soap to them? No? It's actually a fairly common thing. And if anybody's listening, they may raise their hand. I know my sister will say that cilantro tastes like soap to them. And it's actually been identified in our DNA if you're what they call a cilantro taster. And there's, you know, some old I'm not sure if it's folklore or not, but they said that the populations that can taste cilantro as soap are probably the super tasters, and they were actually served the king, and so they would taste foods before the king would and interpret whether or not there was something that could be poisonous to them. So that's kind of an interesting thing. And the other one is a DNA trait that makes cruciferous vegetables taste really bitter. And so that might be something like cabbage or broccoli or cauliflower or Brussels sprouts. And there are some people who really just cannot tolerate that really bitter flavor of those vegetables. And so those type of foods are pretty much out of their food preferences completely. But aside from that, you know, when we're talking about introducing the baby foods to the babies, some of the ways that we might be able to kind of introduce them to foods that are a little bit that will kind of pave the way to building good food habits would be to introduce some of the more mild foods to begin with, like, you know, something like potatoes or avocados or peas or oatmeal, because they have a little bit more in the way of bland. And then you begin to introduce more of the vegetables and introducing the fruits a little bit later, so they don't have that initial preference for those things that are sweet. So it's really interesting to watch how the development of and the preferences from the children are.
I wonder how much this is akin to your body needing it more and less. Like what the nutrients that are in it. A few months ago, this last fall, I was in Thailand, and I was traveling with a friend who uses a lot of the essential oils, and she was saying how she had white sores in her mouth and she would use frankincense for those white sores. And she was saying anyway how great it was. She brushes her teeth with it, and she said a lot of people really don't like it, and so they, you know, but I happen to have white sores in my mouth. She's like, Denee, please try it. She's like, you're gonna hate it, but try it. So I was like, okay. So I got back to the room that night and I went to try it, and I loved it. I loved the smell. I loved the taste. I loved everything. And she said, that's because you need it.
Huh. So
People who
what
don't
kind of
need
a
it,
flavor was it?
it was like, I don't know, akin to cinnamon. I mean,
Okay.
I'm terrible at, I'm terrible at describing taste foods. Like I can eat junk and have no care.
Yeah.
But like I did not have any aversion to it at all. It was absolutely fantastic.
Mhm.
I loved the smell and taste of it. And she said that's because your body needs it. If your body
Mhm.
doesn't need it, then you don't like the smell and you don't like the taste of it. I'm like, okay. So
That's
I don't
nice.
know how, the same that is like I used to, oh my word, the idea of Brussels sprouts. Oh, it was not even possible at one point in my life. But
Yeah.
I will have times in the year now where I am craving Brussels sprouts. There's
Right.
not going to be another vegetable that fills the spot.
Right.
Got to be
Right.
Brussels sprouts. And that's an odd vegetable to get to like. It has that bitter taste to it sometimes.
Yeah.
And yeah, so
Yeah.
I don't really fully get why or how all that is, but it's a real thing.
It is a real thing. And, I mean, even for myself, my parents will tell you that when I was a kid, I would pick out the smallest segments of mushrooms out of a pasta sauce because I could not bear the thought or taste or texture of a mushroom.
That's
And
how
now
my
there
son
aren't
is
enough.
with an onion.
Yeah, yeah. And I was the same way with the texture of a cooked onion. And so, now as an adult, I can't imagine not having that in my diet. And
Right.
so, you're right that taste preferences can change. And so, in terms of like, culturally, if we've gotten used to eating a certain way, whether it's super salty or super sweet or high fat, and then we're trying to make some modifications, the first thing is, oh my gosh, the food is not going to taste like I'm used to, and that's what I really want. And oftentimes it's a little bit of a mind over matter thing with in terms of how it is that you can like change a habit, and in the matter of just a couple weeks you're able to looks like poor Denee's computer died. You're able to change your food preferences about very easily. So let me ask, just as I'm looking at this and she says that her computer died, let me see if we're still streaming on Facebook. That's really funny. Funny, not funny. Hang on one second. Let me see where we're at with all of this. I hope I didn't lose anybody. Oh, we're still alive. So I'm not sure how that's happening if her computer has died. But in any case, so, when we're trying to change our food preferences, moving away from like a super salty or a super, super sweet diet, then what we really need to do is just kind of ride the wave for that first 2 weeks and see how we can step away from the salt shaker, step away from some of the extra sweeteners, maybe at the end of that 2-week period, trying to see how well you're handling things. And you'll be surprised just by tasting something that might be salty again, how easily that you have kind of changed that food habit. And so I guess that Denee got bumped off. I'm not sure if she's going to be able to return. But one of the last points that I really wanted to make was that, our taste buds really do play a major role in digestion and in the way that our body identifies hunger cues. And so when we are not able to take the time to chew foods and to be able to taste them, our stomach actually doesn't have that same fullness feeling. And I should say it's not just your stomach, it's your brain. So there's a study that was done it was published in 2014, that they actually took 2 sets of people and they provided them chocolate milk. One set of the people, they were drinking it by mouth. And then the other set of people, they were delivering it through a nasogastric tube straight into their stomach. And then after they got done drinking it, they allowed these people to go and eat at a buffet. And so what they found was that the people who drank the chocolate milk ate far less than the people who sort of bypassed the whole tasting of it, and it was delivered right to their stomach. So there is definitely a mechanism that goes between the mouth and the brain in terms of helping us to understand when it's enough to eat, when we're beginning to get full. That is an important aspect. And so when we think about how easy it is for us to consume a lot of calories by way of, say, beverages, we think about like the, like a fancy coffee drink that's got lots of sugar and fat. We can suck that down with no problem without really even having the opportunity to appreciate the 500 plus calories that just came from that. But if you were to have to take the time to chew through those calories, the conversation between your mouth and your brain would give you a better indication of how full that you are. So I just kind of like stand in awe again at the way that God designs us so that we can fuel our body, so that we are able to make sure that we get the nutrition that we need, that our bodies are well cared for, that we keep ourselves fueled. And I'm just going to wrap this up since it's just me. This whole segment was called Taste and See, and as I was thinking about this topic, I was obviously drawn to the verse that says, taste and see that the Lord is good. And it just reminds us that He's provided us not only the ability to be able to keep ourselves well and healthy through nutrition, but he's also sensitive to the fact that we want to be able to enjoy what we are consuming. And so there is a lot of satisfaction that we get with the way that foods taste, and that we want to make sure that we are enjoying them. So we can kind of help ourselves enjoy all of those things just by digging into creative ways to eat different types of foods. And so anyways, with all of that, I'm going to sign off and say good night. And I appreciate Hannah for helping in the background and providing us with some slides. And we will see you next Tuesday. God bless.